Captain Elias Ward stepped off the landing ramp and felt an instant weight on his chest, not from the planet's gravity but from the strange atmosphere surrounding Vigilus Sanctus, the world known for its extreme loyalty to the Imperium, a place where devotion was praised above all else and where every citizen walked with a quiet, almost perfect sense of purpose. And as he moved through the city, he noticed enormous shrines made of polished stone rising above every building, banners of gold and white waving from tall towers, and crowds walking in perfect lines as they whispered prayers in soft voices that never rose above a calm hum, creating a strange peace that did not feel natural to him. And he wondered why the world felt so controlled when everything appeared so beautiful. And as he continued forward, he saw children gathered in circles, repeating lessons about duty and obedience, their young voices steady and emotionless, which made him uneasy because he could not see the spark of curiosity in their eyes, only a calm seriousness that felt too practiced. And when he glanced at the adults working nearby, he realized they followed the same pattern. No hesitation, no conversation, just quiet tasks done with flawless timing, as if every person on this planet followed an invisible guide. And although many smiled politely at him, the smiles never reached their eyes, as if they were greeting him because they were expected to, not because they wished to. And as he walked deeper into the heart of the city, he felt a faint vibration under the ground, like a soft pulse moving through the stone, and he wondered if the world's famous shrines held some hidden machinery. But when he asked the local escort, the man simply bowed and said everything on Vigilus Sanctus was guided by the light of purity. A vague answer that told him nothing and made him even more suspicious. And when night came, Elias was led to a guest chamber high inside a golden tower where he tried to rest. But he could hear faint footsteps outside his door that paused every time he moved, as if someone stood guard not to protect him, but to watch him, and the constant soft chanting that drifted through the air made it difficult to sleep, for the voices never stopped, rising and falling like waves that washed against the walls. And when morning arrived, Elias went back into the city to explore more on his own, hoping the light of day would make things feel normal. But everywhere he went, he sensed unseen eyes tracking him. Even though the streets were open and wide, and he noticed robed figures on distant rooftops, always standing still, always watching, disappearing whenever he tried to look directly at them. And while he examined the public archive building, a young worker named Mira brushed past him and whispered that not everything on this world was what it seemed, urging him to be careful before vanishing again into the crowd, as if she feared being seen speaking to him, which made him question what the people of Vigilus Sanctus were hiding. And wanting answers, he followed a set of instructions Myra had slipped into his pocket, leading him into the lower levels beneath the main shrine, where he discovered long tunnels filled with warm lights and humming machines that stretched deep underground. And the strange pulse he had felt earlier grew stronger here, steady and rhythmic, as if the entire planet breathed through hidden engines. And as he walked farther, he found symbols carved into the walls that resembled Imperial icons but were shaped slightly differently, as if someone had changed their meaning over time, turning them into something new while still keeping the old design to avoid suspicion. And when he reached a large hall, he froze in shock at the sight of hundreds of citizens kneeling in perfect rows, their heads bowed, their hands together, all praying at the exact same pace to a calm voice that echoed from an unseen source. A voice that felt gentle yet commanding, a voice that sounded as if it reached into one's thoughts, soft but impossible to ignore. And Elias felt his heartbeat rise as he recorded the scene with his data device, knowing that something powerful was influencing these people. Something more than simple faith. But before he could study the room further, a loud alarm began to echo through the tunnels, red lights flashed, and masked guards stepped out from hidden doors, moving with quiet precision as they swept the hall searching for the intruder. And Elias darted into a narrow maintenance shaft, crawling through the dark as the guard's footsteps grew louder, barely escaping when the alarms grew distant again. And when he emerged into the quiet night, Myra found him again and led him through a hidden doorway behind a closed market, where a small group of locals waited, their faces tense but determined. And they explained that the entire population lived under the influence of a strange relic known as the Beacon of Harmony, a device kept hidden inside the central shrine, which sent out calming signals across the city, signals that removed doubt and fear but also erased the ability to question anything. And this forced kindness made everyone seem peaceful, but it also made them unable to think freely. And the group believed the Order of Eternal Light used the beacon not for protection but for control, shaping the people into perfect followers by soft guidance rather than force, and they asked Elias for help to disable the device, for they feared the planet would never know true freedom until the beacon's influence ended. And although Elias knew this mission was dangerous, he understood the importance of choice, believing that humans should live by their own will, not by an unseen hand, so he agreed to assist them, and together they formed a plan to enter the central shrine. During a great ceremony where the entire city would gather, giving them a chance to move unseen while the leaders focused on the crowd, and when the ceremony began, the city filled with bright lights, music, and prayers that echoed from every speaker, and while the citizens gathered in the open square, Elias and Mira slipped into a side entrance that led deeper into the heart of the shrine, where the air grew warm and the pulse of the beacon grew stronger, and as they reached the inner chamber, Elias saw the beacon for the first time, a tall crystal floating above a circle of glowing metal, sending soft waves of light through the room, each pulse gentle yet strangely powerful, and he felt a calmness wash over him, making his thoughts slow and quiet, until Mira shook his arm and helped him focus, reminding him that the calmness came from the device, not from his own mind. And as they approached the beacon, the High Seer entered the chamber, speaking in a calm voice that carried a subtle influence, saying that the beacon kept the world united and peaceful, shaping the people into a community without conflict. And although the seer insisted the device protected the world from fear, Elias saw the truth in the seer's steady eyes, understanding that harmony created without choice was not true harmony at all. And gathering his courage, he reached out and disabled the beacon, causing the light to fade and the pulse to stop. And when the device powered down, the calmness that filled the air melted away, leaving the city outside suddenly quiet as the people opened their eyes with new awareness, and confusion spread, but so did curiosity and hope, as if a fog had lifted from their minds. And Mira stepped forward to guide them toward a future where they could build their own path. And as Elias returned to his ship, he looked back at the world below, knowing he had uncovered one of the Imperium's most secret truths. And though the planet faced an uncertain future without the beacon's influence, it was finally a future shaped by human choice, not by silent control, and that thought filled him with cautious pride as he prepared to leave Vigilus Sanctus behind forever. As Captain Elias Ward's ship drifted away from Vigilus Sanctus, he felt the weight of what he had done pressing against his thoughts. For even though he had freed the planet from the beacon's influence, he knew the sudden change would create confusion, struggles, and questions that no outsider could answer. And as he stared at the stars, the ship's console beeped with an incoming message marked with Imperial priority, instructing him to travel immediately to a nearby station for debriefing, yet the tone of the message felt colder than usual, almost as if someone already suspected he had uncovered something he should not have. And when he arrived at the station, instead of a warm welcome, he was greeted by a silent hallway and 3 officials who examined him with expressionless faces before asking him to sit in a dim room, where a single light flickered above him, casting long shadows that made him uneasy. And they questioned him about every moment he spent on Vigilus Sanctus, every word spoken, every location visited, as though searching not for information but for mistakes, for a slip that would reveal a hidden truth. And although Elias answered calmly, he sensed their doubts hanging in the air, especially when one of them asked why he had disabled the beacon without permission, to which Elias responded that the device controlled people without their knowledge, taking away the humanity the Imperium was meant to protect. But this answer only deepened the official's silence, and after a long moment, they ended the session and told him to wait in his quarters until further notice, leaving him alone with a growing fear that someone in the Imperium had wanted the beacon to remain active, not because it kept peace but because it kept the world obedient. And while he waited, he tried to contact Mira to ensure the planet was stable after the beacon was shut down, but every signal he sent returned with a strange error, a block he could not break, and he began to wonder if someone was intercepting his attempts on purpose, which made him pace the room restlessly until suddenly the lights flickered and turned off, leaving the room in total darkness except for a faint glow from the hallway. And when he stepped outside, he found the entire station strangely quiet, with no crew in sight, as if everyone had simply vanished. And as he walked carefully down the corridor, he heard a soft humming sound that grew louder the farther he went, a familiar pulse that made his heart tighten, because it sounded too much like the beacon, but weaker, as though something was being tested or rebuilt. And when he reached a sealed door marked restricted access, he noticed the humming came from behind it. And although he hesitated, he accessed the control panel and opened it slowly, revealing a small chamber where a new crystal hovered inside a metal frame, glowing with the same soft waves he had seen beneath the shrine, but smaller and not yet active. And standing beside it was an old man in formal robes, who turned slowly as if expecting him, greeting him with an unsettling calm, and the man explained that Vigilus Sanctus was not the only world guided by harmonic devices. Though the beacon on that planet had been the strongest, almost a prototype for something far greater, and Elias felt a chill as he realized the Imperium itself was developing these devices, not as tools of safety but as instruments to keep moral order across distant worlds. A plan wrapped in secrecy to prevent chaos but at the cost of free thought. And when Elias insisted that people deserved to think for themselves, the old man only smiled gently, saying that humanity often lost its way without guidance, and a calm mind ensured loyalty, creating unity in a galaxy full of danger. And although Elias understood the man's reasoning, he could not accept it, for he had seen the emptiness in the eyes of the citizens who lived under such influence. And before he could speak again, a soft alarm sounded, breaking the moment, and the old man pressed a button that caused metal shutters to descend around the crystal, sealing it away, and he instructed Elias to follow him deeper into the station, saying there was something he needed to understand before making any final judgment. And despite his unease, Elias followed, walking through long, silent corridors lined with glowing symbols similar to those he had seen beneath Vigilus Sanctus, until they reached a circular chamber filled with floating screens that displayed dozens of worlds across the sector, many of them glowing with faint pulses that matched the rhythm of the beacon. And Elias realized with shock that the phenomenon was far more widespread than he had imagined, with entire populations living under gentle influence from devices they never knew existed, guided by forces hidden behind prayers, rituals, or civic routines that kept them calm and structured. And the old man explained that these worlds rarely faced rebellion, disorder, or doubt, living in peaceful patterns that allowed them to work in harmony. But Elias noticed that the screens showed no laughter, no curiosity, no creativity, only quiet, steady movements and distracted smiles, and he felt his chest tighten at the thought of billions living lives shaped by something they could not see or question. And the old man, sensing his discomfort, placed a hand on his shoulder, telling him that the Imperium had always struggled to keep its people united, and the devices were simply a tool to prevent fear from leading humanity astray. But Elias stepped away, reminding him that humans were at their best when they made their own choices, even difficult ones, and that hope could not grow in minds held too tightly by unseen hands. And as he spoke, the screens flickered, showing sudden movement on Vigilus Sanctus, where crowds gathered in confusion while Mira stood at the front, guiding them with calm determination, helping them through the first steps of their newfound freedom. And seeing her so strong filled Elias with courage, because it proved that people could stand on their own once the quiet chains were removed. But before he could say anything else, the station shook as alarms blared, signaling that someone unauthorized was approaching. And the old man frowned as if expecting trouble, telling Elias to stay put. But Elias knew that whatever was happening, it was no coincidence, and he raced toward the docking bay, where he discovered several ships approaching the station, each broadcasting a message demanding control of the beacon prototypes for security purposes. And he realized a new conflict was unfolding, not of battles or weapons, but of ideals. The question of whether humanity should be guided or free. And with no time left to think, Elias boarded his ship and prepared to leave the station, determined to warn Mira and anyone else who would listen that a hidden network of beacons existed, and that their influence might spread if no one stood against it. And as he flew away, the stars ahead looked darker, as if hiding more secrets waiting to be uncovered. And Elias knew his journey was far from over, for uncovering one truth had opened the path to many more, each one more unsettling than the last. And he understood that to protect free will, he would have to uncover the entire structure of the beacon network before it reached worlds not yet touched. But time was running short, and the pulse of the devices echoed in his memories, reminding him that even in silence, unseen forces could shape entire civilizations if left unchecked. And so he set his course toward Vigilus Sanctus, once more driven by a hope that humanity, even after centuries of struggle, could still rise when given the chance to choose its own destiny.